Welcome, everybody. And we're back again this week for the other version of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour on the Source TV radio network. Just for those of you that are new listening in, Source broadcasts live, streaming video and audio. We're in 145 countries. We're picked up by 11,000 terrestrial and also internet radio stations globally. We have in the North America over 3 million listeners, and we have 38 million global listeners to Source TV Radio. This is just one of our shows, and we hope that you really enjoy the show. It's going to be awesome. We have a very special guest. Each week we have different artists on the show, and those artists include people who play in the field of jazz, jazz crossover, jazz fusion, anything jazz touches on. Our station is devoted to keeping jazz alive 24/7. So if it's jazz rock, jazz pop, jazz country, jazz gospel, jazz reggae, we're there playing that music for you. So tonight we have, again, a very special guest. Her name is Hailey Brinnel. Hailey is both a trombonist, a composer, a vocalist, and a band leader. So without any further ado, let me bring on Hailey Brinnel. Welcome, Hailey.
Hi, Mel. Good to be here.
Great to have you here. I always like to start off the show by having the weekly artist tell everybody what's cooking. What are you up to? And what events are coming up? What are you doing? Just give them a heads up.
Sure. Right now, I'm based in Philadelphia, and I'm have some local shows coming up. In addition, I'm working on getting together material for my third album, which we can get into in a minute. And besides that, I am here in the winter enjoying the less busy musical season and hanging out with my cats and playing video games.
Well, that sounds like fun. Good. Do you have any events coming up that you want to share with the audience right now?
It's so funny. I should always have my calendar in front of me when I do this. I'm going to be playing at Chris's Jazz Cafe in Philadelphia coming up. This Monday I'll be on the Upper West Side with Augie Haas, this awesome band leader, and Nicole Zaritis, who just won a Grammy last week at the Gin Mill on the Upper West Side. That's my
wonderful,
that's
wonderful. Well, be sure to let us know so we can let all the fans know. Typically, we have between 60 and 100,000 people listening into this show, and right now we're up to 30,000 something already. People have clicked on. So let us know so we can help promote all the events that are coming up. Okay.
Of course.
So let's start off talking about something which I find unique: the trombone. And it's like no other instrument. It doesn't have keys. It's different, and it has very different associations. For example, in New Orleans, there's always a trombone when there's a funeral. Yeah. So it's associated kind of with the death and the dark side. So it's a very interesting kind of instrument. And everybody that I've had on the show who plays trombone is totally different in how they approach that instrument. It has the most varied characteristics of, I think, any instrument. So let me ask you, this is a question that interests me. When I hear you play trombone, it sounds to me like the trombone is not playing notes, but it's playing words, that it's singing along with you. So, that's my take on it. Why don't you comment on that and tell everybody how you came to choose that instrument and, something about how you approach it.
Sure, and it's funny you say the trombone sounding like a voice, because trombone has been called the closest sound to the human voice. Maybe cello too is always up there.
Yeah.
And that's something so interesting about trombone, is since it's so close to the human voice, I feel like trombonists get such a wide variety of tones and sounds and styles. Especially, the history of the instrument going back down to New Orleans and like Kid Ory, Jack Teagarden, everything was really sounded like speaking. When you listen to those old recordings, it's really, really wonderful and wild to hear the tones that were sort of generated back then and how it developed through, big band, through bebop and J.J. Johnson. But I picked the trombone really only having the knowledge of those early players. That's sort of the music that was going around in my house when I was a kid. It's funny, though, I didn't want to play trombone originally. I wanted to play the French horn because it had the most windy tubes. And as a 9-year-old, that was very appealing. But my brother was saying, well, no, you can't be in jazz band then. He plays the saxophone and the piano. And so he asked if I would want to play trombone. My grandfather played trombone, so we had one. Turns out it didn't really work anymore, so I had to get one anyway. But
and you ever thought about clarinet?
Well, it's so funny. In college, I was a music education major, so I had to learn a little bit of every instrument. I loved clarinet. That was my favorite other instrument that I got to learn. But
especially since you're so much into swing, I would have thought clarinet would have been one of the at the top, and a trumpet.
Yeah, all those trad instruments. Although when you play jazz clarinet, you need to add vibrato to it, which is hard on clarinet.
Yeah, it is. Benny Goodman seemed to have mastered it a little bit.
A little
bit. Okay, so when you play the trombone, what are you trying to achieve musically, sonically?
My biggest goal is, and we kind of already touched on it, I want to be able to take anything that I sing or that I hear in my head and be able to portray it on my trombone, which is true of anyone when you play an instrument. You're trying to hear something in your head and be able to convey that without having that obstacle of thinking about translating things to, specific theoretical concepts. But on trombone, I'm really trying to imitate and complement my voice. In fact, I do an exercise where I trade with myself and trade, solos. And I've actually done that on the bandstand a number of times, taking, solos where I sing something, then try to respond and play it back. Because that's really the ultimate goal, is to feel like I can switch seamlessly between the two, and my brain is wired for the same for both instruments, and being able to do that without any obstacles in my way.
Yeah, and again, when I think about somebody who plays a trombone, a note doesn't tell you very much. It's how loud you play the note, how long you hold the note. It varies. Every artist will approach the same piece of music and look at each of those notes and play them quite differently, even though it's the same note. So, on a trombone, how do you think about that? Do you think about it in terms of notes?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm a big believer in, I think about everything in terms of a wider melody and concept. So whether I am improvising or playing a piece I wrote or something I'm sight reading someone else wrote on a gig, I'm always trying to think of the larger melody and what I'm trying to accomplish as a whole, and not those individual notes and the sort of spin that I put on those.
Wonderful. Okay, I was just curious because again, trombone players just interpret the music so differently than a keyboard player would, or somebody who plays, drums or
Yeah,
percussion.
and some of it too comes from, we don't have buttons or keys, so we
That's
have to
right.
work with those limitations the best way we can.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, well, you gave a good explanation about why you chose it. Now I know in your household, you mentioned you had a lot of music. Your father was a musician. Your brother was a musician. Why don't you talk a little bit about your early life and, in your household, and how music was part of everyday life there?
Sure. Growing up, I was always at my dad's gigs. He's a great piano player and a singer, Dave Brinnel. He actually still plays. He gigs more than I do most weeks up in Massachusetts. So Western Mass people, Dave Brinnell. But growing up, I would always go to his gigs, solo piano and singing. He played a ton of Great American Songbook standards. I grew up with, especially a lot of the Rat Pack, Sinatra, Dean Martin. So that music had always been spinning around in my head, as well as some big band music, early swing, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald. In addition to, the Beatles, 60s and 70s pop rock music. My mom listened to the Ramones and Queen. So had a lot of varied influences going on as a child. But at the age of 12, I started playing out with my dad. We play in, different bars and venues and jazz clubs in the greater Massachusetts area, New England. And that was super formative for me as a young musician, being able to really get out and play professionally. And looking back, like we'd have a whole summer where I was gigging every Friday and Saturday, the whole summer when I was a kid. I don't know where all that money went. I must have spent it.
Probably,
Yeah,
probably ice cream in those days.
exactly.
Well, I'm curious too about part of what you were hearing in your household. I know that you do like hard bop and bebop and swing, and who were some of the really early influences as a trombone player in that genre?
As a trombone player, it's funny. It would have been people I didn't even know the names of at the time, because I listened to the Stan Kenton Band a lot, especially even going into high school. So Frank Rosolino, George Roberts are the two. And actually, the wall behind me, for those of you on video, I have the album "The Four Freshmen and Five Trombones." It's one of my absolute all-time favorite records, and that's that section: Frank Rosolino on top, George Roberts on the bass bone. So that sort of big band sound was the first thing I was really trying to imitate while playing. But also, I listened to mostly vocalists in the jazz idiom until high school. So before that, a lot of what I was doing was, how Sinatra phrases melodies. Listened to a lot of Whitney, weirdly enough, is where I learned a lot of standards.
Sinatra was amazing. Arthur Fiedler of the Boston Pops
Yeah.
used to say that he was one of the two people who the orchestra would tune their instruments to his voice because he was so on key.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you think back on your early influences, somebody like Frank Sinatra, especially on your vocals, would be a very big influence,
And
obviously.
he's someone too, and I tell my students this now: if you have to learn a melody, listen to Frank Sinatra. He was such the master of phrasing a melody exactly how it was intended to be phrased, but it still felt like his melody and his own personal take on it.
Yeah, the other person that comes to mind when you talk about that is Tony Bennett.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
That's also, he was played around my house a lot as a kid. My dad is a huge Tony Bennett fan.
yeah, I would have imagined he would be.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense. In terms of swing bands, which swing bands were big influences on you?
Yes.
Any particular ones that
Oh,
really stand out?
yeah, for swing, I listened to, going back from early Count Basie stuff,
Oh,
was big
yeah,
for me. And going back even further, even before swing, I listened to a lot of the Louis Armstrong Hot 5 and Hot 7.
yeah,
So sort of getting from that trad jazz into swing throughout those groups. Glenn Miller, my papa who played trombone, was a huge Glenn Miller fan. Some Tommy
yeah,
Dorsey too. I remember
yeah,
listening to String of Pearls when I was in high school, and I
yeah.
thought that was the coolest thing. Then when I played swing dances later into college, all that music came back.
Yeah, some of the bands, Glenn Miller, I loved, and he just changed the nature of jazz so much in such a short time.
Mhm.
It's just one you're picking some really not only legendary but great influences on my life also.
Oh, wow.
So let's talk about a little bit about your evolution from you went to college at Temple University and you studied was it music arrangement,
No, I studied they have a major there called jazz education. So
jazz
it's a,
education?
yeah,
Okay,
music education with jazz performance kind of combined.
okay, and from there, when you graduated from college, what did you do? What was it?
So I knew that I wanted to stay in Philadelphia. I just feel so at home in the scene here with all the other musicians and just how music lives here.
Mhm.
So as I was graduating, I sort of started forming. I was playing with a lot of different people, and I was forming sort of my core band that I still play with today. And that's sort of when I decided I was going to start getting serious about recording. I recorded my first album um, the year after I graduated college, I believe. So that was sort of the plan, was get through all of my training at Temple with Terrell Stafford and all of my other wonderful teachers, and then just hop right into the scene.
Now, a lot of the musicians that you started to play with as part of your band, were they from Temple or just from Philly?
Uh, Temple. Two of them were students with me, and one of them, my drummer, was actually one of my theory professors.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. That's a nice switch.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. We're one of the only industries where just that, you can learn from someone as a teacher or a mentor and be on the bandstand with them and learn from them in that way too. And it's really wonderful.
That's great. As a band leader and being a woman, and I've spoken to some women about this who are lead vocalists and have their own bands. Do you find any challenges being a woman and a band leader?
How long do you have?
Well, go at it.
Um,
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's a much longer conversation, but it's no more challenging than being a woman in any other male-dominated industry. I will say that. But yeah, just learning how to handle yourself, who to give your time to, who to purposefully not give your time to in the industry. But if you have a supportive band, it doesn't really matter as long as I feel supported from the musicians behind me. I don't really think about it too much.
Well, you hit it on the head. Music is a very male-dominated profession. And in fact, the Grammys this year was so unusual to have women who took the lead for the first time because the Grammys have been so down on women as artists. And, it has taken them years to come around and to recognize, the contributions that women make. And so many female songwriters never get any credit, and they produce some of the biggest hits in music.
Hmm.
So, I also know women who lead bands, and they occasionally have problems with musicians, especially if they do some pickup musicians at gigs. There's some males don't like following the lead of a woman band leader.
Yeah, and then you don't hire those people again.
No, but I've seen them fired on stage by women. I've seen women do that.
Good, good.
you know,
It's
and
all about knowing, who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with.
I'm bringing it up, Haley, because this music is a tough business. It's people talk about finances being tough, but music is a very tough industry, very backbiting, very petty, very ultra competitive where it doesn't even make any sense. And so, I'm raising the issue of being a woman because it just adds one more layer of difficulty, in carving out a career. And it's one more thing that a musician like yourself doesn't need, but it's still too prevalent in the industry.
Yep, much
So
agreed.
yeah, so I just want the audience to know that when you see somebody on the show who is an accomplished women musician and a band leader, it's a tough road to follow. It's not easy, and you have to build a team. And I want to get to that a little bit later and talk about your team because the music industry has changed so much since your father's days, for example, when record labels and radio dominated everything.
Yeah.
And they had A&R, they developed the talent, and they put the resources there. And now you have to assemble a team to accomplish what a record label would accomplish, and then you have promoting. How do you get promoted since the record labels aren't promoting to the radio station? How do you get airtime? So why don't I want to talk about that with you a little bit. Why don't you talk about your team, how you put them together, and go ahead.
Well, it started with the musicians. It started with my core quartet: Silas Irvine, Joe Plowman, and Dan Monahan, all here in Philly. Um, and then the next step was I found a studio out here in Philly and a sound engineer that I absolutely love working with, Turtle Studios and Sean Svodlanak here in Philly. So that's sort of my local team in terms of helping produce my music that I'm comfortable with creatively and professionally. Um, and then I was lucky enough because I've been doing a ton of self-promotion, doing, I had I think my first single was released. I self-released through, going online to CD Baby or one of those websites. And then I was lucky enough to get linked up with Outside in Music, a New York-based record label run by Nick Finzer, another trombonist, and Alan Blanchard. So they were instrumental in helping me release that first record and my second record. And for the second record, they linked me up with Lydia Liebman, a great publicist again out of New York. and groove marketing, radio marketing promotion out of LA. So in some ways, it's very different than it was, but I'm happy that I did have a record label, and I'm really lucky that helped assemble that team for
Yeah.
me. And then I have Taylor Kelly from a local Philadelphia booking company for the record booking that does my booking, and she's working on my Midwest tour for this summer.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. One of the things that you were hitting on, when you start to put a team together, the business side of the music industry, since most musicians, focus they're artistes and they don't focus on the business side. And today, if you don't do that, you're lost in space. It's a totally different environment. And
Hmm.
the other thing too is, and this is why it's important to put a team together, and like you have. People don't realize how important a sound engineer is in the studio. They
Hmm.
don't. I mean, that's what makes or breaks the music very often.
Yeah,
So
having an engineer that knows you, knows your sound, knows how you like to approach recording, um, lets me sit in on editing sessions pretty much as I want. And is we worked well together because I self-produce, so he really lets me have a respectful say with editing and producing choices, and he works with me, and it's been invaluable.
do you use your sound engineer to mix and master, or you use somebody else?
He edits and mixes, then I send out for mastering.
Yeah, that's so important too. Another thing that a lot of our audience isn't familiar with. Mastering is what makes it commercial in a sense. It's what
Hmm.
makes it radio playable, which is far different than a live performance necessarily.
Yeah, and
So
I use Doug Rouse here in Philly, does my mastering. He's wonderful. So anyone looking for engineers in Philadelphia, check him out.
yeah, well, I just wanted you to talk a little bit like you have about your team, so people get an understanding of the complexity of a musician's life. They just don't get up on stage and perform, and that's the end product, but it's not the beginning. The beginning is a long road to get there. So, anyway, let's talk a little bit about some of the places you performed. I have on my list here the Kennedy Center, North Star Jazz Festival, Alice Tully Hall, Lincoln Center, Birdland, the Lake George Jazz Festival. You've done a lot of large venues. Um, did you start doing this right out of the box, or did you start with smaller venues and work your way up? How did this happen?
So it happens with other people's groups is where I started, especially Sherry Miracle and the Diva Jazz Orchestra. A lot of those venues you listed were with Sherry's band, and all women big band that's been around since the 90s. Um, and I was lucky enough that Sherry started hiring me when I was a sophomore in college, I believe. Yeah, that sounds right. So I was getting to play some of these massive venues and really special spaces, while at the same time with my group that I started sophomore year of college, we were,
Uh-huh.
playing our door percentage gigs and our, driving a long distance for very little money gigs and, trying to work our way up that way. And then last year, was a big year for me because that's the first year that I played with my own group at Birdland, which was a great feeling. So I'd play there before with other people's groups, but that was one of the first moments of, okay, cool. I'm reaching a point where now I can start booking this under my name.
That's
So it was nice being able to work up to those venues with my own ensembles while getting familiar with them and getting those experiences with others.
Yeah. You by 2021. You started to really break out, and you were two things. You participated as a finalist in the Sarah Vaughan International Vocal Competition, and you also had your first album, I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles. That was a
Hmm.
big year for you. Why don't you talk about the evolution, how you got there, and suddenly you have your first recorded album and a finalist in a major jazz contest?
Sure. It's so funny because I think back and I think back like why that did the sort of come out really quickly, and then I think no, I had kind of a year and a half before that album release from I recorded it that we were in a global shutdown. So
Yeah.
leading up to that, it was like nothing was going on at all. I was working with the record label, getting the album released, couldn't do any release shows. Um, in the Sarah Vaughan vocal competition, I I had applied for once in college, and I didn't make it past the first round. And then I had a friend just message me about it saying, "Oh, the deadline's tomorrow for this year." And it was during the shutdown. And I said, "Oh, why not?" And I submitted some of my recordings. And getting the email that I was accepted as a finalist for that was really huge, because pre-pandemic, I wasn't viewed as much as a vocalist. I was viewed as a trombonist who also sang.
That's
So that was really meaningful, getting recognized for that competition, just because it finally felt like I was, being seen for something I'd been working so hard on. And I actually was gigging on vocals well before I was playing trombone professionally. So that year felt important, because my album, and both of my albums, are predominantly vocal with, I have trombone on most of the tracks, but not all of them. And then being acknowledged for the vocal competition, it was a wild few months.
I'm sure it was, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
After being shut down, and now here you are, suddenly center stage.
Although we were playing center stage to a giant open hall, because we still couldn't.
Couldn't have people. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that must be hard to do.
That was one of the stranger performances I've had, because they still had it in the main hall. It was just, and we could all invite, I think, 5 or 6 people, if we chose to. So it's this, huge hall with, a couple dozen at most people just sporadically in the seats. It was interesting.
Let's talk about the success of your first album, "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles." One of the things I really, this is just my impression. You have a warm and kind of a playful way that you arrange your music. It's I can't think of any other way to describe it, but it's evident in the collection of songs that you put together for your first album. So why don't you talk a little bit about making that album? What went into that? What were you thinking? This is your first one, your debut.
Yeah. So coming out of college, I remember thinking, what do I want to record? Obviously, when you're a student, you're playing jazz standard after jazz standard in school and with your peers. So I was trying to think of songs that felt important to me. So I call that album affectionately the Hailey Brinnel Nostalgia Tour, because they are all songs that I have some sort of connection from childhood, from something I had just listened to for years and years and years and just wanted to put my own spin on. Yeah, I'm trying to remember some of the deeper tracks on that one. Oh, that's the one, "What's the Use of Getting Sober,"
Yep.
which is an old Louis Jordan song, but I grew up listening to Joe Jackson's recording of it, and my dad does that song. Or "Orange Colored Sky" was on that record. That I remember hearing my dad and my grandmother singing that and playing on piano in our living room when I was a kid. And so that's, a lot of those songs came from like my rich musical history with my family.
When you look back at that album now, and I know I've asked this of a number of artists, you look back on it now, are there things you would definitely do over and do differently?
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially when you're recording your first album, you're used to playing live, and
Right.
the limitations of playing live in terms of when you're recording a record, it's different. The how you play and how you record is so different.
Yes.
Going back, I remember the track "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles" has a couple transitions in it, that on the bandstand I give a tempo, I snap something, because it really changes. And I remember recording it, and my drummer, who Dan Monahan, who's been recording for years and years, he was my professor at Temple, stop us and say, "Hey, we don't have to go from the beginning every time we go to track." I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." And he was like, "Yeah, no, we can. It's a transition. We can start there." And I was like, "Oh." So looking back, yeah, just those little things informed my second album a lot.
Yeah, I want to get to your second album, and I think I want to get to that, really quickly. I don't want to run out of time and play for everybody a lot of your music. "Beautiful Tomorrow," your second album, released in March 17th, I believe it was, 2023.
Sounds right.
Okay, good guess. And it's such a different album than your first album just 2 years before. Completely different. And you chose a whole set of standards that I want to get into and talk about. But before we get into that, I want to play "It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow," and I want you to tell everybody the incredible background to this song because I find this remarkable. So go ahead.
Sure. This song was written by the Sherman Brothers, who did a ton of writing for Disney music, movies, and parks. And this is the first song you could hear on the Carousel of Progress from the 1964 World's Fair that now lives in Disney World. And that song is actually the current song. It wasn't for the 80s in a little bit for some branding reasons. But this is the song that you can hear in Tomorrowland in the Magic Kingdom today.
Well, why did you choose that song? I mean,
In this, I always wish I had a better story for this. It's, I literally I was thinking about the song and it just popped into my head and it's so catchy. You'll hear like in a second. And I just thought to myself, what if that was a fast samba? And that's all that went into that was me just having a thought of that would be cool and then doing it.
wonderful. Okay, let's hear Hailey Brinnell's, "It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow."
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and tomorrow's just a dream away. A man has a dream, and that's the start. He follows his dream with mind and heart, and then it becomes a reality. It's a dream come true for you and me. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining
Excellent. And it's such a fun song to listen to. Yeah, I love it. You know, tell us a little bit about your evolution from 2021 to 2023. It's such a different album, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of sound and in selection. Yeah, what were you thinking when you thought this is my second album? And your first album received a lot of praise, and I think it was like in the number 30. It's in the 30s on charts.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds right. And the Amazon jazz charts, I remember, was the where it got the highest. Um, yeah, it's funny. Back then I was really, really in just the swing and traditional jazz lane, and I still am there now, but I just found myself gravitating towards different repertoire. As I said before, I listen to a lot of jazz, but I also listen to musical theater. I listen to a lot of music from the 70s. There's a couple tracks on the album. Harry Nilsson's There Will Never Be is on there. Donald Fagen's Walk Between Raindrops. So, getting into things that aren't jazz music, but done in a jazz idiom. I became more repertoire focused and just thought I'm going to perform music I like and in a idiom that resonates with me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be originally jazz, but I'm going to just do something that resonates with me.
Was there a theme that you thought about for this second album?
At first, no, to be honest. At first, I was just kind of thinking of songs that I really wanted to play. And then the more as it was developing, it really became about, especially after we recorded it, global pandemic. So in the development, when I was going through the track list and everything, it really became about optimism. And that's why the album is titled Beautiful Tomorrow. That's why I chose sort of the imagery at the front of the album. If you look at it, it's kind of me looking like a broken doll, just looking up into a light. So it was sort of
Yes,
that idea.
I've seen that picture before. I tried to place it of a like a broken doll in that same pose. And it's a very famous painting somewhere. I know it is.
Oh, I'd love to see what it is to see how
Uh,
much I copied it.
well, I'll find it and send it to you because that's it was classic. I love the cover to that album too. So um, okay, so you started to put these tracks together just when the pandemic was probably at its height.
Yep.
So yeah, the music is very optimistic. It clearly is. So some of the other tracks that are on this album, um, how did you think about including those? Because obviously you probably went through a process of inclusion and exclusion. What did you exclude that you originally wanted to have on this album?
To be honest, things I excluded were mostly jazz standards, Great American Songbook standards. I learned from the first album. In the first album, I didn't even get to perform that much of the repertoire as a release tour because of the pandemic. I did it more after the fact. Um, I wanted to be able to live with these songs for a long time without feeling like they got stale. And some of the standards I was originally going to record, I'd been performing for years and years and years. And I just had this feeling of, no, I want whatever I'm putting out right now to be something new. So a lot of jazz standards got cut.
Yeah,
I still love
you
to
know,
perform, but
you're in some ways your rise as a jazz crossover artist really resonates with millennials, and I wanted you to talk about this. Jazz went through a period, and I really Miles Davis was kind of pivotal in my mind, and moving to bebop and moving to soft jazz, and soft jazz kind of took the edginess to me off jazz, and jazz kind of went into the decline, during the '80s, and but it seems to have a renaissance. I know there's a lot of very young jazz artists in the UK, and so do you want to comment on that about millennials, the 25 to 45 or 25 to 50-year-olds? Because I think they're looking for something that is richer than the urban music that they get fed every day.
yeah, and it's so funny. Now I want to rebrand myself as millennial jazz because I like how that sounds.
Okay.
Yeah. to be honest, I never really thought about how my music would resonate with people my own age. I just was recording music I liked and hoping that it would reach an audience that would like it. But I am really happily surprised to see a lot of people in their, late 20s to early 40s coming out to these shows. And I wish I could give you a reason that I attribute that to. But I actually was more shocked recently. I've been seeing more Gen Z consumers of jazz.
Yes,
Even more
yes.
millennials. I mean, now with, I mean, obviously you have Tamara Joy, you have Leve, like all of these young artists that are, whether it's through social media or otherwise, just now jazz, I feel like is really making a resurgence, even more so than with us millennials.
I think Haley, I think there is an explanation for the millennials and Gen Z's interest. Music when you and again I'm not putting it down, but when you get to hip hop, what starts to occur is looping, and you lose also a lot of the instrumentation and the orchestration that was traditionally found in rock or jazz or blues or R&B, the soul, and it became much less dynamic, and it was really more syncopation than it was music. And I think go ahead.
Oh, just so it's just so funny. I actually just had a conversation about this with I am so wonderfully privileged. One day a week, I teach fourth through eighth graders, and I absolutely love it. I'm an educator at heart, and I was having a conversation with them about the music they listen to, and because they've been, oh my gosh, they listen to like a ton of like stuff from the 70s and and some jazz stuff. And I was asking, what is it about this music that, is drawing you to that rather than what's on, well, I said, what's on the radio? And they said, what's radio? I was like, oh, I feel old. um, but
That's radio.
um,
That hurts.
what they were saying though was interesting. A lot of music, post 90s, where you're talking about hip hop, electronic music, things that involve sampling and electronic instruments, people really like listening to it. And there's so many artists that just do an absolutely wonderful job performing, producing. But sometimes that's not the music people are wanting to see live, even if it's music they absolutely love listening to. So there's sort of that what music feels dynamic when performed live. But there are artists that do both really well. But it was interesting hearing my young students talk about being able to see physical instruments live and how that still has a profound effect on them.
Yeah, I think back to the 2010 and Mark Ronson and Uptown Funk and
Yeah,
and I and John Batiste today. They're recognizing that the roots of to even today's urban music is definitely blues and jazz. That's the roots, and they're turning back to it. And it's so wonderful to see a lot of young musicians who are doing jazz and jazz hip hop.
yeah,
I mentioned Kamasi Washington before the show started. You and I were talking about it, and he does jazz hip hop, and so does Jeff Bradshaw, and his trombone player, and
yeah.
it's
And
just not.
one of the first shows I went to in Philly as a college student was Marquise Hill.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's I think it's wonderful to see the resurgence of music today. That is really it's orchestration, instrumentations coming back, complexity in the music. You know, when you really look at it, jazz is so improvisational. It's probably the most complex form of music, pop music, that's around. And it's the only truly American music.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's such a long conversation. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm trying to bring out from you is, you know, that jazz is resurging, and I
Definitely.
think, and it's definitely post-pandemic. Quite a bit of it, and I think people came out of their shell looking for something that's interesting because their interest was so closed down. And I think they've rediscovered jazz. I think it's just remarkable.
Yeah,
So
especially there's a lot of vocal jazz and jazz standards. If you go on, I'm on TikTok and I'll see like trending music. And one time I
yeah,
saw trending music, Stardust, and I was like, what?
yeah, Stardust. Yeah,
Awesome.
Isn't it? I think it's fabulous. I just love it. Let's play another one of your songs. I Might Be Evil. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about that song, and we'll
Sure.
play
This
it.
is an original of mine. I am relatively new to at least recording originals and writing originals with lyrics. And I was having a hard time writing a song, and knew I wanted to write a blues. And someone my brother gave me, it was him. He gave me the advice: if you're having a hard time writing a song, find a character or someone to write a song about. So I wrote a song about a not so great person, but now people always ask me if it's from my own experience, which hits a little bit, but it's the origins of I Might Be Evil.
Okay, well, let's play for everybody. Hailey Brinnel's I Might Be Evil.
I grew up with a certain code of conduct. You gotta eat or become a meal. Because everybody works harder, walks faster, speaks louder, and never thinks to lie or steal. When there's only room to grow up and never grow out, how was I supposed to feel like I'd ever muster up without filling up my cup? Learn to ask just if I could, without thinking if I should. Oh, I'm starting to think I might be evil, 'cause I'm certainly no until one day he asked, if I told you that I love you, what would you have to say? So I looked him in the eye, smiled sweetly, whispered to him, and sent him on his way. 'Cause I only fly alone. It's the only way I've ever known. Left him standing where he stood. Wouldn't even love him if I could. Oh, I'm starting to think I might be evil, 'cause I'm certainly no from my golden throne I've sung. Got ahead of those winners fast
wonderful, Hailey.
Thank
I
you.
have to make two immediate comments. First of all, your trombone playing. One of the things that is very hard to master is space, knowing when not to play and knowing when to play. And you are a master at that. I mean, that's a very, very difficult talent, because the urge is to keep going. And it's wonderful because it really creates a great emphasis. And the second thing is your vocals in that are spectacular.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, that's one of my favorite tracks that I listen to that you've done. It's just masterful,
Thank
So, yeah, we're running out of time, and I want to be able to get to at least one or two more of your songs. But I have a quick question for you. I know on my station, I have Dion Parson, who has his own show. It's called Sounds of the Diaspora, Artist to Artist. And Dion brings on some incredible, great jazz players, mostly connected to the diaspora and to the Caribbean. And he had Wycliffe Gordon, and I know that you know Wycliffe. So why don't you tell everybody briefly, since he was just on our station, about how you met Wycliffe and performed with him.
Sure. I had a couple of opportunities in college through the Temple University Big Band with Terrell Stafford to play with and work with Wycliffe. I had been listening to him since I was in middle and high school, so it was a huge, huge deal for me. And something that was really special and that I find so special about his playing is he is so rooted in jazz and swing, trad, and blues.
Yes.
And I remembered that was something when he came to play with the Temple University Big Band. The songs he sent, what was one of them? Umbrella Man, the old standards and things that you don't see as much in a collegiate setting, definitely, but not really even in the gig world and, going in most jazz clubs. So that was huge for me to be able to play with one of my idols, but also to hear someone at such a high level of success and achievement playing these songs that were important to me.
Yeah, that's the kind of experience that just, really brings a musician like yourself to another level so quickly. Especially when you get a chance to perform with one of your idols as a child, and Wycliffe is a really cool guy, and he's so steeped in New Orleans blues, and plays blues on a trombone like nobody else. He's wonderful. So I wanted everybody to know that you've had the privilege, and he's had the privilege of playing with you also. So let's turn, because I don't want to run out of time, to another song of yours that I really love. It's called The Sound. Why did you name it The Sound?
Because the lyrics go so fast and the song goes so fast that sometimes all I can hear is just this big sound when it happens. It's just one sound.
Yeah, this is hard driving swing. Is that an accurate description?
Yes.
Why don't you talk just a second about the difference between hard swing and and soft swing? What's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think about hard swing or like hard bop as opposed to swing or bebop. It's something I really love and that's what this song was supposed to feel more like, something in the hard bop range. Because you have bebop, that is when jazz got faster, it got more complicated, but it had this, driving energy. And you have swing, which is all about melody. And hard bop is this wonderful combination of the two, where the melodies are more singable, more rooted in the swing tradition, but it still has that driving energy that bebop has.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when bebop came in, it was hard to dance to. And and hard bop brings that element back again because it's rhythmic and it's danceable, and I think it has a much wider audience. So let's hear your rendition called The Sound.
Butterflies, when I am with you, all the clocks seem to stop with one look in your eyes. Side to side, the baseless melody I hear in my head when your hand is holding mine to make me sing it out loud. My head's a composer, but my heart is ready for the sound of your love for me. Roses bloom, your smile warms me deep inside with a light that is bright as the moon. I can't hear over the melody, the sweet fragrant sound, how it brings inside my ear to make me sing it out loud. My head's a composer, but my heart isn't ready for the sound. The sound when you laugh and pull me near, when you whisper in my ear. It's a symphony and I hear butterflies, the wings are beating beating like a strange foreign drum that I hear deep inside. I can't hide that in my reverie the band starts to play, and the bells are trying to make me sing it out loud. My head's a composer, but my heart isn't ready for the sound. Butterflies when I am with you, all the clocks seem to stop with one look in your eyes. Side to side, the baseless melody I hear in my head when your hand is holding mine to make me sing it out loud. My head's a good composer, but my heart isn't ready for the sound of your love. Roses bloom, your smile warms me deep inside with a light that is bright as the moon. I can't hear over the melody, fragrant sound. My ear don't make me sing it out loud. My head's a good composer, but my heart isn't ready for the sound. The sound when you laugh and pull me near, when you whisper in my ear. It's a symphony and I hear butterflies. The wings are beating like a strange foreign drum that I hear deep inside. I can't hide that in my reverie the band starts to play, and the bells begin trying to make me sing it out loud. My head is writing melodies, my heart can plainly see that it's not ready to perform a note on A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No, I have been in love before and always run away before the song goes louder. I wish I could tell you how I feel, because my head's a great composer, but my heart isn't ready for the sound.
Bravo. Love it.
We do it faster live nowadays. I'm listening back. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Do you have a scat?
Yes, I do. On this record, gosh, what do I do that on? Do I do it on this record?
I don't remember you scatting. I don't remember you scatting on it. You might have. I don't remember it.
Oh gosh. Yes, I do.
Yep. When you compose, do you do all the scoring and charting, or do you have a music director who does that for you?
I do that myself.
Okay.
Yeah, it's generally I'm the kind of person with composing that if I am going to finish a song and like it, I sit down for hours and finish it all in one sitting, or I sit on it for way too long. So I'm very much I need to do it all in one.
Do you play any other instruments besides trombone? I'm just curious.
Piano. I over the pandemic started playing more like pop rock piano. I was doing some duo gigs, and that was a fun time. And some drums.
Okay. All right. Well, a lot of trombone players play drums. I've heard that
Oh, okay.
from quite a few of them too. So that's wonderful. So we have very little time left. In fact, time is really up, but I want to play at least one more of your songs, Walk Between the Raindrops. So let me play that, and then we'll come back. And by the way, when the show is over, hang around. I want to talk to you about something.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So let's play the next song from Hailey Brinnel, Walk Between the Raindrops.
A shadow crossed the blue Miami sky as we hit the causeway by the big hotels. We fought, now I can't remember why. After all the words were said and tears were gone, we vowed we'd never say goodbye. When we kissed, we could hear the sound of thunder as we watched the regulars rush the big hotels. We kissed again as the shower swept the Florida shore. You opened your umbrella and we walked between the raindrops back to your door. Between the raindrops back to your door.
Oh, I forgot that Joe, my bassist, gives that big thumbs up at the end of that.
Yeah.
Oh my
The
God.
virtues of live music.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you have some fans who are calling in.
Oh, I see.
And, you know,
Thank you, guys.
yeah, here's great vocals, and here's another comment.
Oh, thank you.
And another one.
Nice to see you too. I can't see.
Yeah, so you got people listening in and loving your music like I am. Hailey, I'd love to spend so much more time with you, but we're really running down now. A quick question, but I do want to end with one more of your songs. Quick question.
Mhm.
If you could pick anybody from any period, a vocalist, composer, arranger, from any period, any time, classical, modern, to collaborate with, who would you want to collaborate with?
Barbra Streisand.
Wonderful.
Oh my gosh, I am the biggest Barbra Streisand fan. If I could just sing duets with her for the rest of my life, I'd be happy.
Yeah, when she sang Evergreen, it was like something coming from an angel.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't even sound like it was human. It was so angelic.
sing her Happy Days Are Here Again, Get Happy, that thing she would, Judy Garland at a gig last year in Florida, and it was a formative experience.
Wonderful. Okay, let's look at your last song I want to play, which is remarkably different from anything I heard on your album. It's called Cottage for Sale. So, in a few words, a little background, and we'll play it for everybody.
Sure. This is a ballad that I actually learned from Judy Garland recording. And it is just the most heartbreaking song, and it related to something I was going through in my life at that point, and it just felt very important for me to record this one.
Wonderful. Okay, let's hear Hailey Brinnel's version of A Cottage for Sale.
Our little dream castle, with every dream gone, is lonely and silent. The shades are all drawn, and my heart is heavy as I gaze upon a cottage for sale. The lawn we were proud of is waving in hay. Our beautiful garden has withered away. Where we planted roses, the weeds seem to say, a cottage for sale. Through every single window, I see your face, but when I reach that window, there's only empty space. The keys in the mailbox, the same as before, but no one is waiting for me anymore. The end of our story is there on the door, a cottage for sale. cottage for sale.
That was just so beautiful. You
Thank you.
have a fan who just made a comment, so tender and soulful.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you,
that
Mel.
I think that describes it perfectly. So this has been really wonderful, Hailey. I want you to tell fans or tell people where they can reach you to get some of your music and to contact you.
Sure. Feel free. You can always reach out through my website, HaileyBrinnel.com. I'm on all the streaming services and YouTube and all those things. Totally forgot to mention, for those local to the Philadelphia area, I will be at the Key of She Jazz Festival on the 17th this month if you want to come and say hi and support women in jazz. Or just check on my website for my upcoming dates and come say hi at a gig.
Wonderful. Something I'd like you to tell everybody, if you want people to think about one thing when they leave the show tonight about you, what would you want them to think about?
Oh gosh. Um, I would love your takeaway from this to be um, that although I am a musician and do all this cool music stuff, that I'm actually just a huge dork and a regular human being, and you can just come up to me and talk to me about whatever.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, it's been so special having you on, and I hope that we'll have you back again in the future.
Thank you. It's been wonderful, Mel.
Wonderful. You have a great evening.
You too.
Well, everybody, that kind of wraps up for tonight. Our next week's guest is going to be Mickey Houir, the great jazz, blues, soul vocalist, who has at this point a legendary career. So we'll have Mickey Houir next week. So be sure to tune in and enjoy the Power Hour on the Source Radio Network. Okay, good night, everybody.